I feel one of my blessings was to have other moms sit in a group and be able to look at me, not that they really said it, but to be able to think, okay, there really is hope after this.
Hello, and welcome to Guess Who Died, a podcast where we talk about who died and how we feel about it with Jeff and myself, Julia. Hi, Jeff.
How you doing? I can't believe it's been a month or more.
You know, we haven't seen each other in a while, and a couple of things have happened, and I would like to unfortunately have to ask you, guess who died?
Who?
A couple people. Most recently, David Lynch died.
David Lynch.
Oh, no.
Wait. I know the name. You're gonna have to refresh my memory. I wasn't ready for that one.
See, and I know that a couple baseball players have died as well, which I am like totally tuned out of. I'm like, Jeff will tell me if I must know. But I mean, Twin Peaks is David Lynch.
I saw that this morning.
Yeah, or yesterday.
Okay,
yes.
I did see that.
He, the king of kookiness. I mean, he was the Eraserhead and all kinds of stuff. So that was a big lot. He was also just seemed to be a really good guy. He was always talking about just like spreading goodness in the world and let's do the right thing. So David Lynch was a big loss.
Oh man, I see this morning. I'm like, I'm preparing myself for guess who died with who I'm going to talk about, Casey, which just happened yesterday. I heard it. We were in the hallway at the radio station and got a little thing on my watch. It pinged and said, Bob Uecker dies at 90.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Bob Uecker.
He was baseball.
Yeah. Well, he was more than baseball.
Yeah.
First, for me, it was Miller Lite commercials.
Oh.
Then Major League.
Yes, that was my first.
Henry Doyle. Or it's Harry Doyle.
Harry.
He made it believable that he was a radio broadcaster for baseball. Then it turns out he really was for the Brewers.
Yeah. For Julia's sake,
I'm totally glazed over.
I know you're out
I'm
there,
sorry.
and you're not the only one. But Major League, as Jeff pointed out, is a movie.
It sounded like it.
Yep, about baseball.
Okay.
Filmed in Baltimore. I think the first one.
I believe you're right.
But it's a baseball movie, and Bob Uecker plays the commentator of the terrible, awful Indians. No longer the Indians, now the Guardians. But he was the commentator, and he had this great voice. But what was not known was he was a professional baseball player.
Wow.
Who then became a commentator.
54 years he did that. And I never knew it until after Major League came out. And when I'm hearing do games, sometimes for TV, I'm like, it sounds good because you're just used to hearing it because of the movie that we've watched over and over and over.
Yep.
But 90 years old, so a life well lived for sure. But I hadn't really heard much about him, and then it popped out. And I apologize for not knowing more about David Lynch.
Well,
I did
we have
see that.
another one too. Speaking of a life well lived, Jimmy Carter died.
Yes. Yeah. Well. Oh my gosh.
It was a big one just a few weeks ago. So that centenarian, over 100 years old. I mean,
we talk about we've talked about hospice over the years, and he was in hospice for over a year.
Yeah, and had a big hand with hospice.
Yeah, he did so much good. I mean, after being president, he did, Habitat for Humanity, won a Nobel Prize. Not too shabby after a presidency,
Absolutely.
Those of us in the grief and loss community are grateful for his work within the hospice realm. I mean, he really was one of the first presidents to emphasize the importance of such. But also, when you say he was in a hospice for over a year, again, those of us, I know Julia as well, yay, we're grateful, because so oftentimes we get this belief in the community that hospice is when you're ready to die and you got a week. And hospice is not that. They can be doing so much long before. And we're constantly out there trying to advocate for hospice care and what that looks like and the myths around it. And Jimmy Carter, even in his elder years, was going out there and promoting that and sharing and showing that, I'm not gone yet. That's okay.
Yeah.
And I've learned that more and more over the years as we've talked and we've had many discussions. And there's a lot. There's been a lot that we've lost over the last couple of weeks. And, Ricky Henderson a couple of weeks ago. It's like just people they're out there. And, I just found out in my personal life, an old friend from high school passed it yesterday.
Wow.
And it was shock. And immediately, all these memories start flying in my head, and I just chuckle because they're all fun memories. I hadn't seen them in years, but, a lot of fond memories. So it's just, it's weird how it'll pop and you haven't seen somebody and then it just comes flooding back.
Sure. And again, I think we advocate with this show the pop culture side of things too. When you bring up Ricky Henderson, for me, when Ricky Henderson died, that news was just so surprising. But I went right back to being a little boy. I loved Ricky Henderson. It was like the way you ran the bases was like Ricky. And all the stories that came out about him and the way he changed the sport. And again, I think we all can go right back to those positive moments.
When you played Little League, did you wiggle your fingers when you're getting ready to steal?
Yeah, of course.
Spread your legs and having to do all this and then head first dive into second or third. Oh my gosh.
It was incredible.
100%.
He influenced so much. And I think that we forget those things. And I think that's so special. Like these icons, we also forget how much they brought to us.
It's true.
Absolutely. And whether it's a memory of your childhood or a friend from your childhood, when someone dies, it feels like that, you're losing a piece of your identity or a piece of your memory in your childhood. And that can be another bereavement process that you go through.
Maybe it's because of all of you that I find that happy memory or memories. And that's immediately what I go to. And it makes me smile. It makes me laugh and it lightens my heart. And it was kind of wild. I was driving up thinking about it today. I'm like, how do I do that? And I think it's because of just talking about it and being around it and talking about it and talking about it. It works and it helps.
Speaking of talking about it and things that lighten your heart, our guest today is one of the most beautiful lights in the world. I am so excited to get to talk to her. In just a few minutes, we are going to welcome Connie Wolfe. Stay tuned on Guess Who Died? Olivia's House is an independent, freestanding, nonprofit grief and loss center that supports children and their families before, during, or after a loss, all at no cost. When death enters your house, you are welcome at our house, where families are met with professional care, expert guidance, and resources for children and teens of any age. Nestled in central Pennsylvania, Olivia's House continues to be the premier independent grief and loss center. Welcome back to Guess Who Died with Jeff, Julia, and producer Casey. And we are also joined in studio by Connie. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you so much.
How are you? It's been a while.
It has been. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming in.
Sure.
Well, Connie, I'm going to ask you the question that this podcast is all about. Tell us, in your world, who died?
Josh, my son, at the age of 19. He was in a car accident that I found out about from the news versus the regular way, if there is a regular way. But when the police showed up at the door, my fears were confirmed, what I was watching on television.
I'm almost speechless. They are usually so careful about that. Tell us about Josh.
Josh was the life of the party everywhere.
Did he get that from you?
Probably. And my father.
Okay.
We always said that. Yeah, Josh, I know, you read obituaries, you hear other people talk, and that, they were the life of the party. Well, let me tell you, this one was the life of the party as well. And he had been doing the Kinsley construction 2 weeks in the classroom, 2 weeks out on the job site. And he was on his way to Reading to a job site. And he left that morning. In fact, I got up, I remember it was around 4:30, 5-ish, something like that. And I, as a mother, we just had new flooring and carpeting put in. And I got up, I heard him, and I said, remember, don't wear your work boots in on the carpet. Those were my last words to him. But he probably expected nothing else. What else was mom going to say?
Classic mom.
Yeah, for sure. So day went on. It's the second day of school. Our daughter, Lauren, had just started high school. So she goes on her way. John and I, my husband and I, are getting ready for our day. He leaves for work. And I say to him, the news is on. And I see Channel 8 broadcasting live from the scene. And I will tell you, they never showed his vehicle. It was all in my gut. So that was just ugly. And John just kept saying to me, Connie, the accident was 222 South. Josh was heading north on 222. Well, come to find out, he went across the median and did it, and then, was heading south.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, went on, started getting ready. And I look out the dining room window and I see 2 police cars there. And I knew. And I was alone at that point. And I knew. Like I said, I knew. I just opened the door and I said, was it him? And you don't forget any of these details. I got to tell you, it's been 22 years.
Wow. I'm curious, Connie, if I can just ask
Sure.
you, I know you don't have the answer. None of us do. But what do you attribute that intuition to? Because, the facts are right in front of you. You know he's going north, the accident's on south, or vice versa if I mix that up. And it's the fact presented to you is that couldn't be him. Why would he be on that side of the road? But your brain, your gut, your heart, something is telling. What is that? Is that magnetic energy? Is that the strings of love? What is that?
Strings of love is a good word. I just call it that mother's intuition. It just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right.
So they didn't actually say his name on the television.
Never.
That was my
sorry
fear.
if I
that was my
misled
fear.
you.
I'm like, please tell me that wasn't how. I mean, it was bad enough.
Yeah.
And Julie bringing up the intuition. My mom is the same way. She just feels it, and you just know when somebody you love and you just have that gut feeling, and most of the time it's true.
Yeah.
And it's strange how that works out.
Oh, so strange. Very strange.
So, and you're looking back at the last words you said to him. And I think so many of us think of those last words we said to the people we lost. And you said it was typical of what you'd normally say to him. So,
Yeah, of course.
Connie, I have that conversation a lot of times when even a parent loses a teenage child or a teenager loses their sibling, and they'll think, the last thing I said to them was that I hate them and we were in the middle of a fight. And I will say, well, you gave them the most classic, perfect example of what it is like to be in a relationship with a teenager, whether that's sibling or parent, child,
Sure.
and if you were to do anything other than that, it wouldn't have been an authentic experience. So as much as your gut wants to say, why didn't I just say I love you or hug? That wouldn't have been authentic. And that authenticity is where relationships are real. And that's
So true.
I can hear the way you're talking about your son. I mean, he was a special one.
Yeah, he was. Even though, of course, at 19, he drove us nuts. At 14, at 15. But
when you say life of the party, was he like that his whole life, even as a young child?
oh my gosh, so energetic. Up bright and early. We talk about how the days of ESPN when they started at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, 6:30. He would get up and he would just sit and watch all that. I mean, he knew all the sports stats as a little kid. And when it was time for school, as you think about that, when it was time for school, he'd rather be at recess. He, as a young child, rather be at recess, rather be having fun. I got a couple phone calls through the years about some of his behavior, but it was never meant. It was never meant in a vindictive way or a mean way. It's just who he was.
It sounds so familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure we can relate to that.
Yeah, a little bit of talking too much. We can't get him to pay attention.
Yep. All of those. Check, for sure.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Connie, I am curious. We talked about that mother's intuition or that instinct. And that when we go there, it takes us a level beyond what we can see, what we can hear, our 5 senses. There's something bigger than this.
Mm-hmm.
We also think about that when we conceptualize a spiritual relationship with our loved one. So after someone that we love dies, we don't have that same relationship that we used to have, but there is still a relationship there. You telling us stories about Josh or traditions that you do in his honor, that is the relationship. So I'm curious, when I say, what does your spiritual relationship with Josh look like? How would you answer that question?
I was within the first couple weeks. Of course, you're not sleeping. You're barely functioning. And I just so much wanted a dream. I wanted to have a dream with him in it. And John told it. My husband told me, oh, he had a dream. My daughter had a dream. And it was like, what the heck? Why? Why won't you come to me? Why aren't I dreaming about you? Maybe I was trying too hard. I don't know. But anyway, my dear friends, of course, to try and comfort me, said, and in fact, it might have been my mother that told me. She said, he knows you're okay, Connie. He knows you're okay. He doesn't need to visit you yet. And so that stuck with me, and that consoled me, I'll say. But eventually I did dream about him. And the crazy thing is different ages, you know. I would dream when he's a little boy. I would dream a more adult person.
Would he interact with you in the dreams, or was it more watching things happen?
There were interactions. Hopefully I wasn't telling him to not wear his work boots in the carpet. But yeah. So to answer your question, definitely. Oh, and so many folks, I think, whether it's a cardinal, whether it's a butterfly, whether it is some sign, the day of Josh's funeral, folks came back to the house afterwards, and John went outside to say goodbye to some of his family, and he said there was just this butterfly flying around at the azalea bush. I mean, it just would not stop. He said it was there. And also during the outside part of the funeral, there was a canopy up, and many of us were under the canopy. However, there was such a large crowd. There we're out and about. I had cards, I had phone calls, I had messages from people that said, Connie, you didn't see them, but these two butterflies were just flying all around, just almost like they were chasing one another. Well, 6 months before Josh died, my mother-in-law died. And that was the first death that my kids were exposed to. It's close death. And to hear about these two butterflies, and then, of course, John comes in and says, you know, this butterfly was out there. It just kept flying around and flying around. Do I believe that butterfly was Josh? No. Do I believe that's a sign? Absolutely. Lauren had band practice. She came home, Mom, in the evening, Mom, this butterfly was just around me all the time. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
No, because I have never had this happen to me. I mean, I do not go out and butterflies are flapping around your head. I mean, this is not a thing that happens. That is so special.
Yeah.
Back to the dream.
Yes.
Do you continue to dream off and on about him?
Yes, but it's not very frequent. It's not very frequent.
With my father, I had the first dream I had of him in the dream, and it was something I needed from him. He said, and maybe I just wanted it so bad that it happened. I just want to let you know you done good. And we were, just totally cookout kind of situation. We talked, and occasionally now he'll check back in, and I wake up and I'm like, I got to visit.
Yeah.
So I very much, you're giving me chills when you talk about it, because I know what you mean with that, and it is special.
Yes.
And when deer pop around, I got a lot of deer around my house, and they just kind of stand there and look at me, almost walk towards me. And I'm like, I feel like that's my dad, Mm-hmm. So I really, that's a very special thing you have.
Yeah. And on that 1 year anniversary of his death, the three of us, my daughter, husband, and I, we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, we knew it was coming up, and what are we going to do? And we didn't want to be home. We had been supported by family, friends, our faith community, and wonderful, but like, we just wanted to be away. We didn't know how we were going to respond. So anyway, we went for a hike. At one point, Josh thought he wanted to be a park ranger. And so, yeah, park ranger, construction worker. Anyway, so the outdoors. So we thought this makes complete sense. It honors him. We're going to go for a hike. Well, I don't need to tell you what kept flying in front of us throughout that hike that day. So, like I said, you can't make this up.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And I will say, I mean, all of this from the signs, the relationships we have, the spiritual relationship, whatever that looks like, even down to the dream visits, there's a lot of actual research behind these things. You know, there's aside from the collective experience, which kind of, you're so right. You tell this story, it sparks something in Jeff. I'm over here thinking I have my own thing. You know, we all have this collective experience that we know has to be, like I said earlier, bigger than us. But at the same time, there is research behind it. And that can legitimize, sometimes in our grief, we can feel like we're going crazy or that we are making stuff up or reading too far into things. But we're not. We are absolutely not. And the most important piece is that it brings us comfort. But aside from that, just to say, it's real. What you're experiencing is real. You're not making it up. And I love that.
Yeah.
So when your daughter first found out, how did that situation go?
As I said, it was her second day of high school. And after calling John, after the police told me, a neighbor came over, John came home, and my thought was, we've got to get to Lauren. It was just the days of, there weren't texts. Maybe it was instant messenger. Good. I can't even remember how the quick communication, what that was at that time. But it was, we thought, we've got to get to Lauren. She has to hear it from us. And bless her heart. So we go to school, tell what's going on. And here she was called down to the office. And she said, I thought, what did I do? How am I getting called to the office? So, I mean, now we laugh about that a little bit because she was a good kid. So
She is your daughter too.
Yeah.
She got that from you too.
So we tell her, we actually had our pastor come with us as well. And she just looked at us, and my father-in-law had been sick at the time, and she thought it was pop-up. And we said, there's been an accident. It was Josh. And of course, and I can't remember exactly what she asked, but, you know, how is he? What's going on? And to tell her he was gone and just hold each other. That was really, really, really hard. Any parent who knows how much you hurt for your own child, for your child. Yeah. So, and probably the next hardest thing was telling my parents. And yeah, I wish I could have done that differently, but
In what way?
they lived over 2 hours away, and to call them and tell them and hear my father screaming, I'm thinking, oh, I should have called their pastor. I should have called somebody they know to be with them when I told them, but you're not thinking. You're not thinking rationally.
You feel outside of yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Your brain is quite literally doing that. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
whole entire section of your brain that shuts down when you first experience a loss, and that doesn't allow you to think through all the details of what you should be doing and how to handle everything perfectly. But I empathize with you. The heartbreak of making that phone call and having someone answer and, oh, hey, honey,
Yes.
how are you?
Yeah,
and then you have to
exactly.
deliver that news.
Exactly.
It's those little moments that just are constant in loss that
Yeah.
are so painful.
Yeah. And as I said, 22 years later, I can still, it just feels as if I can remember so many of those details.
Talk about that. It has been 22 years. What do you notice that is different, that is the same, that's easier, that's harder? What is different about your bereavement now than it was? I mean, we're coming into a new calendar year right now. So thinking of your second year of bereavement versus now, what do you notice?
I have 2 grandsons now, and Uncle Joshy is a topic of conversation. In fact, I think the one somewhat behaves like Uncle Joshy.
Oh, great.
But just, I think, and I will give Olivia's house all the credit in the world to continue to talk about him, whether it's what would he did Uncle Joshy play football? Yeah, Uncle Joshy played football. What was his number? Oh, I want to be that number. So at 5 years old, the 2-year-old not so much anymore, but at 5 years old, he just, I still have pictures on the fridge of Josh and all family and friends, and always wants to, the 5-year-old always wants to know what he was like and what did he do, and the graduation picture in the living room. Oh, there's Mommy and there's Uncle Joshy. Yeah, how old was he on there? And he does ask, how did Uncle Joshy die? And we say he was in a car accident. Of course, their mind just starts going and thinking, is that going to happen to me? And but as I said, learning to let that person continue to be a part of our lives.
And it sounds like with your grandkids asking about him constantly, wanting to connect after 22 years and them not ever have known him, and your daughter and your family and you and your husband keeping him in the family like that that's a great connection. Mm-hmm. A great spiritual connection.
Yes.
And what happens if one of them said, Uncle Joshy I dreamed about Uncle Joshy. Have you had that happen yet?
No, he hasn't told me that.
that would be a connection.
Heard many stories like that, which is always so cool and because a little spooky, but very cool and very real. But I almost had tears in my eyes, Connie, as you were describing that, because that is it's like the epitome of perfection of how you should handle loss within a family structure. That is your daughter's brother. So when she has her children, of course her brother is going to play a huge role in that. And, little boys are lucky to have a cool uncle, and they have that, it feels like. Now, obviously, we wish Josh was here and throwing him up on his shoulder, and that would be ideal. But since we don't have that deck of cards dealt to us, you all are just handling it the most second best way you possibly could. And I just think that is so special for those boys. And that, Jeff, you said it best, that is the spiritual relationship. They do still have that connection. It's just not physical where they can touch.
Right. So true.
I see that with my sister-in-law and my nieces. She lost her brother unexpectedly, and she very much keeps her brother in their lives. He's everywhere. And she talks about him all the time, so they know him very much. As they get older and older, they'll always know who their uncle was, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. And it's been rewarding as a mom to see Lauren, my daughter, supporting others. She had a good friend who just lost a brother within the past year, and she'll reach out to me right away and say, when she told me what happened, and how can we help, Mom? Well, what should we do? I'm going to get in touch with Julia, because this friend had 2 young children as well. And so just explaining it, helping them understand it, relate to it. I think those resources are so important.
And a lot of people are afraid to have these kind of conversations with kids. They're afraid to, know what to do or even take that first step. So what do you think led you all the way back in the day, 22 years ago, to reach out for support and to have these conversations and continue to do so with the grandsons? What drives you?
If I think back to just a few months after the accident, I was introduced to Leslie Dell through our adult Sunday school. We were having different agencies and organizations come in and talk about their efforts, what they do, their programming. And so I was able to talk with her about it. And then we eventually were the first group that came through the house, the first Hearts Can Heal program that was in the house. So that was so helpful. When I look back at that, I mean, there's that commitment. Yes, you need to be here at every session. And really, we wanted to open up. I could see all of the three of us, my husband, my daughter, and I, just falling apart. And to know that there's the support and to learn how to deal with the grief. How are we going to move forward? How do we put one step in front of the other? One of the things, and I still have it, it was Easter, because we were in the spring session. And it was write a message to that loved one, stick it in an envelope. And I'm probably not remembering the exact instructions, but anyway, write a message to the loved one, put it in an envelope, tuck it away. And I will tell you, that is still in my box of Easter decorations.
Wow.
I haven't opened it. I feel like Lauren and John and I all need to be together if we are going to open it. I'm not going to peek.
What would make you decide this is the moment we're going to do this, or it hasn't come yet?
I guess it just hasn't come yet, but I might be getting close.
I like that. Maybe this will be the inspiration.
Yeah, maybe this. Yeah, maybe it should happen this year.
Well, Connie, I am curious, as a bereaved parent and a bereaved mom, having lost a child, but also parenting a bereaved child, what were challenges there for you? What do you remember as being hard parts, things that stuck out to you, things that were difficult to juggle or navigate? I mean, how did you navigate that time? And your parenting. How did you navigate parenting?
Yeah, a lot of prayers, a lot of support from friends and family, as I said, our faith community, but really trying to keep an eye on her. But at the same point, I was too focused. I didn't have anything else to focus on but her. And God forbid, I thought, how in the world, like nothing can happen to her. How could anything happen to her? God wouldn't do this to me. And Lauren did struggle with depression after that. She was hospitalized. And of course, then going away to college was the scariest thing in the world because I couldn't see her every day. And we had our ups and downs. She had her ups and downs. And now to see her as a parent, you still worry at times. I take a look and think, oh, is she okay? Is she okay?
Yes.
But just trying to stay in contact. And we are blessed with a close relationship with her. She never went off in I'm not going to have anything to do with you. So I'm grateful for that. We were able to stay the mother-daughter connection, even though it was scary at times.
When did you feel like you got past the overprotective mode?
Oh, gee,
or haven't you gotten there yet?
Well, she'll be 37. No, the overprotective. Anybody who's a parent can relate to that. It's tough, but you have to let them figure things out and know what they need to do to feel, I'm going to say, secure and have the tools they need to move forward. And when I hear her wanting to help somebody else, I'm thinking, okay, you're pretty strong right now. You got this.
It's a cool part of the bereavement process to witness when you've done a lot of that work, going through finding your coping skills for your feelings, doing that assimilation, and then that reconstruction piece is what happens on the outside. It's how you can show the world that you've done healing, and being able to genuinely help others is part of that. And that is so cool that you get to witness that as a mom, and let us be ones to tell you had a major hand in that. So kudos to you for allowing her to grow up so healthily with her
Yeah.
bereavement. What wisdom do you have to offer other moms, whether they were you 22 years ago or 22 years later now? What wisdom do you have to offer?
You do get through it. Helping, being a companion with Olivia's house, I feel one of my blessings was to have other moms sit in a group and be able to look at me, not that they really said it, but to be able to think, okay, there really is hope after this. Like here's this woman who lost a child in whatever that fashion may have been, and she's still going 22 years later. So as far as wisdom advice, I say don't be too proud to ask for help. Don't be too proud to accept it. You're going to fall down. You're going to get back up. You're going to fall down again. Just use whatever resources you can to stay strong.
Thank you so much, Connie. I will tell you, before you came on here today, did record our intro. I called you the brightest light. And then you came on and you said that Josh was the life of the party. So I just wanted you to know that you were also described the same way that Josh was today. And that gives me chills just thinking about it. So that was a little Josh moment we all had here today.
And I feel like I know you so much better. I've known you for a couple of years now. So it was great sitting and talking with you.
Yes.
I am so glad I was able to do this. So you are quite welcome.
Thank you, Connie. All right. We'll meet you back here in a minute on Guess Who Died?
Guess Who Died is brought to you by Olivia's House, a grief and loss center for children. Olivia's House is a community-funded organization that provides comfort and education to families when they need it most, and we are able to keep our doors open thanks to donations from people just like you. Find out ways to support or get support from Olivia's House by visiting www.oliviashouse.org.
Jeff, did I not say that Connie was a bright light?
I feel lighter having talked to her.
She just brings that energy of pureness. I mean, my goodness. And then she describes her son in the same way. You can see the lineage of brightness in that family.
And it was a nice bright light to see. And the story and the connections that she talked about. And then we got to the dreams and how, she finally got to have that dream that she was waiting for.
Yes.
And did she say that she has them continue? She said she has different ones and it's different age ranges for a kid to a teenager, young adult. That was interesting.
Yes. And I think that speaks so much to motherhood, because I have dream visit. I have dreams about my dad sometimes, but I knew my dad, when you're 12 years old, all old men are old men. They're all basically the same age. So my dad was old man aged. Okay. And he often got mistaken for my grandfather too.
Okay.
And I would
wait
say
a minute now.
my parents had me late in life. So he was, but when I think of him, I always think of the same person. I'm not thinking of him throughout his lifetime. But as a mom, when you think of your child, you are not just thinking of the age they were when they died. You are absolutely thinking of all of the ages that they were throughout their whole lifetime. Those have an equal effect on you and can play on your emotions. So I think that really speaks to the unique experience of losing a child, even down to the dreams that you have about them.
That's something I've never thought about. From us losing our father, we see what we saw at the end, when who they were when they were living, but we see that version. And I always thought, mom would see that last version, but to hear her describe it, I would never even would have thought of that. And I think that's pretty fantastic.
Yes. And it's fantastic that Connie has the ability to share that. And I think, again, that is what speaks so highly of all of our guests on our podcast and of you and of producer KC, is that we are willing to go there. We are willing to have that conversation, and going there is where you find the healing. It's just taking that step towards curiosity or towards finding support or admitting that you might need some help. That is where the healing lies. It just requires taking that first step.
And that they will go on.
Absolutely. Continue that spiritual relationship. Well, maybe listening to this podcast is your first step towards healing. And if so, welcome. Tune in next time to find out who died. Guess Who Died is an Olivia's House production, sponsored in part by the M&M Lissauer Family Foundation.